Yep.
Go.
Oh.
My name's Mark Eustace, and I wrote this book here called Impresario of Castro Street. I arrived via the Green Tortoise in San Francisco in 1974, and immediately kind of thrust myself into a life of underground theater and wild sexuality. And I met Harvey Milk because I was a Super 8 filmmaker taking classes at City College, and we used to go to Harvey's store to get our film developed because it was a camera store. And there was a clerk at Harvey's store named Danny Nicoletta, who is also a filmmaker, and every time I pick up my film, there'd be more filmmakers there, and we would get into discussions about our films and making films. And that wound up to be the first gay film festival. All of us came together and created the first gay film festival, which is now in its, I think, 44th year, and is the oldest and largest film festival, gay film festival, or LGBTQ festival in the world. And it was also the time when Harvey was Danny Nicoletta was the clerk at Castro Camera, and we became very close friends. And through him, I became friends, or at least acquaintances, of Harvey Milk. And at the time, it was the Anita Bryant thing, where there were all the ballot on Dade County against gay people, and it was a heavily political time, and it was a time of reflection and trying to figure out how to go forward. And I had a huge fight with Harvey in his camera store, of which Danny recollects fondly, where the veins were actually bulging out of my neck and his as well, about assimilation versus fitting in, because it was his belief that that year, because we were fighting so hard, that we had to straighten ourselves up, put on suits and ties if you were a man, and dresses if you were a woman, and march in the parade with signs where we were from, and just look like straighter versions of ourselves. And my whole thing was that some people, couldn't do that. There was a whole group of people that were we didn't have the word trans then, but were trans, and also drag queens and stuff, that didn't want to be that and wanted to celebrate ourselves as gay people of who we were. And part of our fight, to me, was in order to be able to express ourselves fully and fabulously. And so he and I went back and forth on this argument, and Harvey was always very self-righteous and always right in his mind. So he was very condescending, but in a way, looking back in history, his point was valid. Not the valid point, but a valid point, as well as mine. So we had that kind of contentious relationship, friendly, and he did come to the gay film festivals. And we had another argument about there was no cigarette smoking at the festivals, and he said, well, that's just fascist, because you let people smoke pot at the festivals, not cigarettes. And we're like, well, pot is fabulous and cigarettes aren't, so there you go, man. Anyway, that was a great time, and gradually in my career I started making movies and evolved into making one of the first documentaries on AIDS that was ever made by a gay perspective in 1986, which really started my film career, and made films up through the mid-90s, and then realized I couldn't make a living doing it, so I morphed into being an impresario, and did shows at the Castro Theater with great movie stars of yesteryear like Debbie Reynolds and Tony Curtis and Jane Russell and Ann Miller and Sandra Dee, and then some people like John Waters and John Cameron Mitchell and Alan Cumming. And I did a series of, I think, 45 shows in the course of 20 years, of which I look back fondly in the book, and that's kind of what the book is about. I loved doing it, and I loved all the people, save a few, that I did, and I actually grew to have relationships with several of the stars, which one was Carol Lindley, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, and who was a dear friend of mine. And a few people like Ann Blythe I still talk to. We call each other on each other's birthdays, and miss each other when we don't talk to each other on our birthdays. So that's kind of the story of my life.
Okay, go.
So I wrote this book, a fabulous book about me, baby. So I wrote this book. It's called Impresario of Castro Street. It's in two parts, Act 1 and Act 2. Act 1 deals with the early days, with the Harvey Milk days and the 70s in San Francisco and the assassinations of Harvey and George Moscone and Jonestown. And then the AIDS epidemic and how we became active in the community, both in the arts and also in politics around AIDS. And then the second part is mostly my reminiscences of the movie stars that I worked with, and lots of fun stories. My whole thing about the book was I never wanted to be mean-spirited about anybody, so there's lots of dish, but it's not mean or horrible or ugly. It's just, my friend Carol Lindley taught me that you should always be kind to each other, and so that was the force of creating this book, was to have personalities, have fun, have dish, but be kind. Well, you just asked me what peace means to me or why we need peace in the world. Well, I mean, A, who's for war, really? I mean, even the people that are for war will always tell you they're for peace. B, I think we live in an incredibly polarized world right now where everybody's fighting with everybody else, and there needs to be some common ground where people can sort of figure out any similarities that they have with each other. And it's a noble cause, and it's something to really try and do. I don't think the cynical part of me says it's not possible. The optimistic part of me says yes, it can happen. So that's what peace means to me.
They're doing okay?
Hi, my name is Mark Eustace, and you're watching the Peace Day Global broadcast.
The show's going?
Hi, my name is Mark Eustace, and you are watching Positive Spin Television.